Hi, how you going? It is this time of the week for Helen's Focus for the week. I'm a little bit earlier tonight than usual because I am going out to Lisa's meetup as a member of our group. I like to support members and I'm doing that tonight with Lisa, so really looking forward to it. So what I want to talk to you tonight about is something that is probably pretty traditional in terms of productivity, and it is something that I haven't talked to you about before, and I think it is something that we can really become stressed by, and that is, how do we manage our email? So if you're like a lot of people out there, you actually use your inbox as your to-do list. And the problem with that is that that's actually not what email is designed to be. Sorry, the inbox within your email system is designed to be. The inbox is really like, you know, the old-fashioned, or they still do use them, the in-trays. If you were in an office environment and you're sitting at your desk and that's your role, you may well have have had an in-tray. So what that means is it's meant to be, hello, whoever's giving me likes, I love it, thank you so much. What that's meant to be, oh, Adair, hello, gorgeous, is a really temporary holding bay, for want of a better word, that needs something to be done to it. It obviously isn't meant to just pile up and pile up and pile up. And if you think of an in-tray with pile-high paperwork, then that's not a good look. And in essence, that's really what a lot of our inboxes are, because we can often get so many being in business and they can overwhelm us really quickly. And we can find that before we know it, there's, hundreds, thousands of emails in our inboxes, particularly if you're like me and you tend to subscribe to a lot of great experts, gurus, whatever you want to call them out there. You want to learn from them. But of course, what can happen is that we can't process them quicker than we actually get them. So your inbox is not meant to be like an in-tray. It is meant to be a temporary holding bay or a sorting place that you can then use to receive your emails, but you clear, ideally at the end of each day. Now, I don't do that all the time. I'm happy to admit that I can, especially when it comes to subscriptions, I can get, I can wake up in the morning, and particularly if they've come from the US, and there's like 20 emails sitting in there, and it's like, where did they all come from? So what I've actually have done myself, which is something that you can't stay on, okay, sure, what you're saying here, so I'll pop back. Of course, darling, that's fine. What do you think about having, I missed that, I'll just have a quick look, a junk email addy that you use when you subscribe to those freebies? Are you meaning like a separate email address? That's something that I've actually I'm actually thinking of making that the junk one, and actually I have a separate one that's for my business. But yeah, a separate email address. We can have any number of email accounts. Of course, we don't want to have, we don't want to have clutter, whether it be email address or whatever. But yeah, certainly you can do that, and that's something I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking of doing, a separate email addy, yeah. I suppose what I tend to think is, and it's something I can experiment with a new email account, is that it's one more thing to have to check. Whereas if I have it pretty much all in one place, I can go through them pretty quickly. But I think if it's becoming overwhelming, and they tend to be those subscriptions, then you're right, Adair, I think it's a great idea, thank you, to have a separate email address. And then it's up to you whether you want to just look at that every now and again, or whether you want to be a little bit more formal and check it every day or every week or every month or whatever. But of course, be prepared that there's going to be tons of them if you subscribe to a lot of them. So two things with that. The first one is to look at minimizing how many you get. I know when I started in business, I subscribed to so many different people because I was learning so much. And now that I've been doing this for a little while, I actually realize the value of what's called just-in-time learning. When I'm wanting to learn something, let's say email sequencing or Facebook ads, that's when I'll subscribe to the people that specialize in that area. And then when I'm no longer need that, then I'll delete it. Or in other words, I won't necessarily subscribe to anybody and everybody because it sounds great. I'm much more strategic in regards to that. So that helps to lessen them. The other thing, and as Adira said, have a separate email account. The other thing that I do use is a program or a software called Unroll Me. And the idea is that, and that's just one example, there's probably other brands that are similar. Basically what it does is it captures all what it sees as being the main sort of subscription emails into one email that you can elect to get. I have it every day. I think you can elect to get it less frequently than that. And so instead of it cluttering up your inbox, you're only actually reading one email, but all the emails are within it. And what I actually did over the weekend, which was a beautiful feeling, was to unsubscribe from a whole lot of them. Because as I said, I believe now in just-in-time learning. I don't have a need to have all of these subscriptions, and it is clutter. And too much clutter is stressful. I'm going to do another Facebook Live just on clutter. But email clutter can be a really big problem. So you want to look at what it is that's coming into your inbox, this temporary holding bay, as I mentioned before, as a starting point. And I want to talk to you now about what is called the 5 Ds. So the first D, and that relates to what we've just been talking about, is to decide. Managing our email is about making decisions. And to make decisions, we have to be clear about what the purpose of our email is and what we, therefore, when we receive it, what we're going to do about it. So that then leads on to the other 4 Ds, and I'll spin this thread of deciding throughout each of them. So you start off with decide. So when you get an email, you need to make a decision about what you're going to do with it. The problem when we have an inbox influx is we're not making the decision. We're actually not doing that, and that means that we're not obviously removing the emails or doing whatever it is that we need to do with them. So the first D after decide is to delete. So what you can set up, if you haven't already, is where you can see your emails, just the top little section, like in the window of when you are looking at your emails, so that you can actually read the subject line, you can see who it's from, and you might even get the very top part of the email. Now, if that's what you can set up, if you can, please do, if you haven't already. What it means is you can delete that email if you know it's nothing important, that it's not something you want to keep, right from the get-go without even opening the email. And that is quicker, and it's actually really empowering to actually think delete, 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 delete sort of thing. So if you can set up that sort of view on your email, with your email program, I really recommend that. So I suggest that you go through and delete to begin with, because it makes it quick. It clears out the ones that you know that you don't want to have. And that's the decision that you've made in terms of deleting. So then once you've culled, in essence, a number of your emails, what the next D then is, so we've talked about decide, delete. The third one is defer. Now, there are some emails when you read them that you need to take some action, but it's not something that you can actually do right now for whatever reason. And that's a decision in itself. So you know you have to do it, but maybe it's not due, whatever the action is required, for a couple of days or something like that. And you've got higher priorities because you've worked out what those are, and you know that you will do it, but now's not the top priority. The issue with email also, I'll just say this as a quick segue, is that emails that we receive are, generally speaking, other people's agendas. They're not necessarily ours. When we send emails, then they're more our agendas. And we want to make sure that we're prioritizing what is the most important and or urgent thing for us that we need to be focusing on. And that may not be the email that's come through that's sitting in the inbox. So another aspect of deciding is working out what your priorities are and being confident and decisive about what you will do with each email, if anything, at that point in time. So the defer does not mean deferring forever and having that inbox clutter, as I was talking about before, where you actually don't do anything with it. What I suggest when you want to defer is that you actually make some sort of action, depends on your email program. You can put it in a calendar and make it a task. You can put a separate calendar notification that says to action what that email is, what it is that is the action that you need to do. So whatever way that works for you in your email system, your program, what you are doing is actually rescheduling your work to be done, your actions to be done with that particular email. So you're not ignoring it, but you are making the conscious decision that now is not the best time, but this other time, tomorrow, the next day, whatever it might be, or even later today, is the time when I will action that I'll focus on that. And sometimes you can do that also under defer because you are waiting on something from somebody. You can't action it now because, as I said, you're waiting for something to happen, someone to get back to you, whatever, before you can do more. What I do then is do the same sort of scheduling of a reminder after whatever time I think is required. Either I've heard from the person in the meantime, which is great, or if I haven't, it's a reminder to follow up with that person about the thing that I'm waiting on. So that's, again, you're making the decision, you are deferring it, but it's a specific reason, and you are then setting yourself up with a notification to get back to that, to action that again, either, as I said, with what the person has come back to you about in the meantime, or to follow up with that person or people after that time. So we've talked about the decision to delete and then to defer. The fourth one is to delegate. Now, if you're a solopreneur and you don't have, say, a VA or anybody else in your team, then maybe you can't delegate. It will depend, obviously, on your own situation. But it might be that you, even if you don't have your own team, that you need somebody else to do something to be able to progress whatever it is that is the action in or actions in that email. So your delegation might actually be with a peer. It might be somebody else that you're collaborating with in some way. So they may not be on your team. You may not actually employ them as such, but they're required. Their input is required for you to be able to do this work. So that is a form of delegation. This email's come through, it requires so-and-so's input in some way, so you could delegate that to them. Now, of course, if you do have your own team, then the delegating could be easily be for members of your team. So you might have a VA, or you might have on-the-ground team members, and of course you'll know who to delegate that to, because that in itself is a decision. As I've said, each of these steps require a decision to be made. So ideally, you're going to be able to, hopefully, delegate as much as possible, because when we delegate, it takes us off out of our in tray, so to speak, to the other person's in tray. Now, of course, I think it's best if you have a reminder when you've delegated that work, even if it's someone that you're collaborating with, so a peer, is to set up a reminder of when you would expect them to do that work and to get back to you, so that if they haven't, you know that you can follow up with them. So you've probably picked up already that I'm a big believer in setting reminders. I have lots of reminders. But the beauty with that is it gets it out of my head. I don't have to carry it around with me to think about it. Oh, I must remember to get back to so-and-so. If that happens to me when I'm out shopping, driving, whatever, I will actually put it in my mobile phone email program right at that time. And of course, not when I'm driving, but when I, stop and that sort of thing, so that it gets out of my head and it's in my email system straight away, and my calendar, whatever it is that I use. And that is really empowering because, and it's actually, I was talking about stress before, it actually takes that stress away because you don't have to try and remember it. You know that is what's required to keep the momentum with things going. As I said, this inbox is a sorting mechanism. So we want things to be moving through it. It is not meant to be some stagnant pond that's yucky with, flooded with all these emails that are really doing nothing but just sitting there and taking up your energy. As I've said, it's a type of clutter, and clutter is energy. And we want to preserve our energy as much as possible. You know that I talk a lot about managing energy, using energy wisely, really even more importantly than time. So that is to decide, to defer, to delete, to defer, to delegate. And the fifth D is to do. So of course, there's going to be emails, I would expect, in your inbox that you actually need to action now. Now, that might be because it is urgent, and that's for you to decide what you consider to be urgent or not. Or it's something, and this is something, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Getting Things Done system by David Allen. In the productivity world, he's a bigwig. And he talks about if something, and this isn't just email, but it relates really well to email. If you if you can respond to an email that's within about 2 or so minutes, then it's better that you do it right at that moment, because you will actually be quicker at doing it. And then it's the same sort of thing as I was talking about before. Then it's out of your head. You don't have to think about it. It's done. It's dusted. And you're not carrying it around in your head, or in this case, you're not carrying it in your inbox. So think about what you need to do at that time when you are checking your email, when you get this email. So can you do it and it's only going to take a couple of minutes? That's great. Do you need to do it right now because it's urgent? Or is it, and hopefully this is the case, it's during the time that you've actually booked in with yourself to check email? You've probably heard this before from lots of other productivity people. It is better that you actually set aside time a couple of times a day, however many times you want. That's up to you. It varies. People tell you different things. I tend to do it 3 times a day. I tend to do it in the morning, before I actually start work, lunchtime, and then towards the end of the day. Some people will say don't touch them before before lunchtime. I tend to think I like to know what's going on, but I do it quickly. So it depends on what you're doing, but it might only take 10 or 15 minutes. And so if you just set aside that time at times of the day that are going to work for you, that's when you can decide if that's what you do, that 5th D, right during that time. Might take more than a couple of minutes, but maybe you feel that it's appropriate. Hopefully you've already decided with all the other emails. And so the ones that you decide that you want to do now in this time period, then you can focus on those. So it gives you that protected time. And you know you're not missing out on doing other things that you should, inverted commas, would be a higher priority to do. This is your email management. We're in business. We have to work with email. But we want email, managing our emails to be actually, fun. I could talk another time about how to make it fun, but it is a really, I've been talking about dopamine hits. When you see a clean inbox, or there's 1 or 2 that maybe you're deferring, but you know that you're going to be attending to them within the short a fairly short time frame, that is really empowering. And that, it's like clutter. How do you feel when you walk into a room? It's like, that's been decluttered in whatever way. So if you are able to use these principles to manage your email, get on top of that inbox, be the boss, then I really definitely recommend it. And related to the booking in specific times to manage your email, to sort through your email using those 5 Ds. The other thing, of course, to say is please, please, please turn off your email notifications, because what happens is that it of course takes our focus. And you know what it's like. There's usually the first line or you know who it's from, and it's like, oh, what do they want? I've got to have a look. I've got to have a look. And before you know it, you're down in that rabbit hole. So and that's why I like to check mine 3 times a day, because I know that I'm not leaving it the whole day. I'm only leaving it, 3-4 hours, and I'm okay usually to not be bothered about leaving it that long. Now, of course, if you think it is something that could be urgent or whatever, then yeah, go check it now. But the more time that you can devote to whatever it is that are your priorities that you've actually decided upon already, rather than being, just reactive and just responding to emails as they come in, the more you will feel, the more you'll progress with your work, because you'll be more productive. And because you're not having your focus distracted all the time, and you will feel more in control. Managing email is creating a system. And so this is the system that I'm suggesting. There are others out there. Obviously, it's up to you what you decide to use. This works for me. I can remember the 5 Ds. Anything that's simple, I love. So that's what I use. I would love to hear how you go with it. And please let me know in the comments, ask questions. If you're watching the replay, please go ahead. I know it's not a sexy topic, but it's an important one, because as I said, we use email all the time. So with that, I will love you and leave you, and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.